It's obvious by now that Xenoblade Chronicles X is not a traditional sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles. Most expected that to be it for the original story of Shulk, the Monado, and everything else. Yet the Switch presentation surprised us with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, featuring a brand new cast in what seems to be a brand new world, yet still connected to the original Xenoblade. So it's time to break out the old analysis machine to see what secrets and hidden details we can find. But it's not working alone this time, as we've reached out for some expert help.
I guess he's talking about me. Okay, seriously. Hey everybody, it's Chuggaaconroy. I'm here to help Derek out with this analysis. Thank you so much for having me. He reached out to me for some outside help because, well, the analysis machine is like a helmet that hooks up to your brain. Not directly, because that sounds very painful, but it refuses to show its wielder spoilers, you see, and Derek has not finished the original Xenoblade Chronicles, whereas I have, so he reached out to me for some assistance, and I am happy to provide it. So, thank you for having me, and yes.
So what are we standing here like a bunch of jokers for? Let's get started. It all begins with a young man, likely our new protagonist, stating that he's going to Elysium for someone. Elysium is not a location from the previous game. This is something brand new. However, it is a common term in classic literature, along with Elysian Fields, that refers to a kind of paradise. At face value, this is the only story we're really given from the trailer, but there are moments where we can pull out something more. But we'll dive into the story and characters proper a little later. We next see the presumably new main character running toward a walled city that features a vertical windmill. There's a large building in the back next to some kind of tower with walls surrounding all but the entrance. We also see a few houses on the left, which could denote it as the residential district, while the right side, near the entrance, seems relatively open, meaning it might be a market of some kind.
Also, check out the building style. It looks a lot like Colony 9, especially that big building on the left. Looks a lot like the area around Dunban's house, the marketplace, that kind of thing. You'll see what I mean if you compare that. But what I find a lot more interesting is on this rock over to the right of the protagonist outside of town is a bunnet, a returning enemy that appeared where else but right outside of Colony 9. It's pretty likely that this is a Homs colony.
I was going to get to that, but you're right. This city generally gives the vibe of Colony 9, and similar monsters drive that point home. But let's look closer at the protagonist. He's dressed mainly in blue and gold with mechanical components as part of his armor. We can see a gauntlet on his arm, some kind of backpack, a tube at his waist, and metal plates on his shoes. Could all of this allow for exploration without fall damage and maybe tie into how he fights?
That would make a lot of sense, actually. There was fall damage in the original Xenoblade Chronicles, but X got rid of it, allowing you to jump a lot higher, allowing for better platforming, as well as fall greater distances without having to worry about falling too far, just allowing for better exploration all the way around. As for the backpack, I'm thinking it could be a helmet that he could easily flip onto his head, allowing him to explore underground, or maybe even dive underwater, which would be a series first.
Movement is definitely key here. We actually get another look at the protagonist along with a short-haired girl, who we'll get into later in this piece of concept art. Here we can see an X-like symbol on his chest near his neck. It doesn't seem to be a scar, and the red coloring of everything makes it hard to decipher whether it's a tattoo or some other kind of marking. But more important is the grappling hook on his arm. Could this actually be used to climb to higher locations, allowing for much easier upward movement in the game? As we'll see later, moving into the sky is a major visual motif of Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
I'm gonna chime in really quick to say that more than anything else, I am shocked that they thought people would actually want to use this image as their desktop background. It hurts my eyes just looking at it. Let's just move on to the next piece of art.
Right, we'll just return to this town, which we get a slightly better view of as the camera begins to pan. It's covered by what seems to be a large tree, at least at first glance, but this foliage covering the town isn't a tree. We think they're actually roots. We can see similar roots snaking down the rock wall on the left, which are also covered in leaves, just like the roots above the town. There's even a normal tree here as comparison thanks to a few pine trees in the distance. However, it's hard to tell just how tall those are. Even more intriguing is how this rock wall that the roots are coming from seems to be shifting as well. It looks to just be one continuous piece of rock, so how is it undulating like this?
Well, I'm not entirely sure on this, but my immediate thought was not that it was a rock wall, but rather that it was a living creature. Where it's shifting, there seems to be two horns where the head would be at the end of the neck. This rock wall could at least be part of some kind of creature or some kind of big life form, but I'm just thinking, can you imagine if this thing were an enemy and we saw enemies even larger than what was in X? Ugh.
That's kinda insane, but not out of the realm of possibility in Xenoblade Chronicles. Let's continue on though as the scene changes to show the protagonist running toward the camera, sword in hand, through what appears to be flaming wreckage. Before we get to the sword itself, we want to mention how there's no sign of the X-like scar near his neck that we saw in the earlier concept art. And it's not even in the other concept art that's shown directly afterward. So was this changed since then, or could he receive the scar at some point during the game? It's impossible to say for sure, but it's a distinct possibility.
We gotta talk about that sword though. I mean, it is Xenoblade after all. It looks remarkably like the Monado with its red coloring and just the idea of being an energy blade in general. The dialogue hints at the boy's goals and how they may be tied to Elysium. But here's a crazy idea for you, and I know at Game Explain we all love crazy theories. At the very end of the trailer, we get a better look at the sword. It's a distinct red color you don't see anywhere else, except one other place. And there's a green gem on it that's extremely important to this.
Chugga's right. I mean, take a look at this scene from the trailer that focuses on a red-haired girl standing amongst the flames. Her clothes and hair are the exact same color that the sword is. Not only that, but the green gem at her chest is the precise same shape as the one on the sword, but it's also the same shape as the life pods from Xenoblade Chronicles X. The shape is likely just a cute reference similar to Lynn's Monado hairpin in that game. But the presence of it on both this new sword and the red-haired girl has some major implications.
I don't think it can be a coincidence that these two are so similar. We think this game's Monado will be its own separate character, and that she's it.
And there's actually more evidence of this in the trailer itself. Throughout it, credits are shown with background elements, facial expressions behind the character designer, and music sheets behind the composers, both of which we'll get into in due time. But right now, the final one is the most important. This shows that Tetsuya Takahashi is once again the executive director after both the original and X. But behind this credit are script pages, and thanks to Gisenko on GameFAQs, it's possible to read these and get a sense of the story. The first page he translated features a character named Vandam, very likely a reference to the fan-favorite commander from X. In it, he's discussing the relationship between a blade and a driver with a character called Rex. Vandam explains that the blade is immortal and will recover from injuries quickly unless the core on their chest is destroyed or if the blade's driver dies. Rex responds that drivers must protect the blades, and so he will protect a girl named Himura.
And right there it is. I do want to interject for a second to say that Vandam is also the Japanese name of Colonel Vanguard in Xenoblade Chronicles. It seems like he's just kind of the Cid of this series at this point, whereas Final Fantasy has Cid, who is in every game and always has something to do with the airships. We always have a Vandam, in English or Japanese, that has something to do with the Defense Force. Rex is more than likely the boy we assume is the protagonist, and the red-haired girl we saw must be Himura. Himura seems to be pretty much immortal, but for some reason she's unable to get to Elysium by herself. She needs Rex, who is considered her driver. And together, they protect one another. If he dies, so will she. He cannot let the core on her chest be destroyed, and perhaps in Elysium, the two of them will be safe.
But more importantly, this suggests that Himura is the blade we see Rex wielding. Somehow she's able to change back and forth, and it's his duty to get her to Elysium. Of course, we don't know why, but we can definitely see that he's desperate to do so. That is why he's screaming to someone that he won't let them stand in her way. It also provides more meaning to some of the concept art. In one, we see Rex and Himura standing together, looking out over the clouds at a giant air whale. This also provides a better look at her outfit, which consists of socks that go over her knees, short shorts, and a halter top with bug-like wings draping down, though they're likely just simple cloth. More importantly, they're holding hands, showing the connection. But the next piece of concept art shows the exact same scene, except the artwork is more defined and Himura is gone. This is made all the stranger because Rex still appears to be holding her hand, almost as if she was still there. And with the new Monado in his other hand, she may still be.
Before we look at any other script pages though, let's return to the trailer itself, specifically the scene revealing the character designer. These are all being done by, I am so sorry, Masasugu Saito, who previously did character design work for Cyborg 009, Call of Justice, and Expelled from Paradise. As a strange connection, he also redesigned Celica, not from Xenoblade Chronicles X, the Celica from Fire Emblem, for Awakenings DLC, though the Celica design in Fire Emblem Echoes is being handled by the Japanese illustrator Hidari.
In the background, we see examples of his designs with 3 of the characters, including Rex and Himura, displaying a range of emotions, whether it's happy, sad, or embarrassed. But there's also a separate piece of concept art that better shows them off. While it doesn't show anything new, we do get a better look at this new character, who is quite obviously a cat girl. This seems to be our main party so far, though the cat girl is obviously not a blade based on her design. So could she be another driver, or is that exclusive to Rex?
I'm not gonna lie, when you said that she's obviously not a blade, I was like, well, of course not. This doesn't take place on Mira. That's another timeline, but no. Freaking X's terminology making things confusing. Anyway, we don't know if that's exclusive to Rex or not, but we do see one thing that the cat girl can do. Riding on a bigger cat. It's definitely meant for this purpose thanks to the harness around it, so there may be more options for how characters can get around. Or there's another somewhat crazier idea. We don't see Rex in this scene at all, so that makes us think either there will be sections where different characters are featured, maybe if the party gets separated, or the method of transportation changes depending on who leads the party. Rex has his mechanical contraptions to get around, maybe this cat girl uses, well, her own kin.
Either one seems pretty plausible, but let's look at the forest that she's in as well. There's a fog in the distance making it relatively dark, but the path is lit up thanks to a special fruit that seems to naturally grow. Could this be farther up the rock wall that we saw near the town? The rocks, the grass, and the roots all seem pretty similar, so we think this is at least somewhat nearby.
There is one more character that looks important though. A blonde-haired girl standing next to a tree looking out over the sky. We're given a closer look to see that she's dressed just like Himura. Same tiara in her hair and same green core at her chest. She is another blade if that theory is to be believed. Question is though, does she have a driver? Could the cat girl be her driver? Or does she have another purpose? We honestly don't know this, but along with many other scenes clearly show that the character designs are much more anime inspired than in previous Xenoblade games, which I like. I'm kind of glad they're going for a style and not just like a half style where it's halfway between one style and realism.
Thankfully, the second page of the script translated by Guess & Co. may shed a little light on these new characters. It seems to be more comedic in nature as 3 female characters, which includes Himura as well as girls named Nia and Hikari, are sharing a bath. It's quite likely that this is the common hot springs trope seen in many animes. The dialogue even has Nia telling Hikari that she has a nice body. It's nothing too major except we see that Nia has a bit of a mischievous streak. But there are key points here. Mischievous catgirls is another common trope in anime, plus the name Nia is much more Anglican, kind of like Rex, so we think that Nia is the name of the catgirl. Continuing on, Hikari is a more traditional Japanese name, translating to light, just like Himura, which translates to flame. Fitting since we see Himura surrounded by fire, while the blonde-haired blade, who we think is Hikari, is standing in light. So this scene seems to imply that Hikari will be a member of your party. The question remains though as to who her driver may be, and if she can become a sword, what will it look like? Questions for the future, I suppose.
The final script page is the one Gesenko had the most trouble reading. It features a leader of something guiding people towards some kind of entrance to an ancient ship. Nia is among those people, with characters named Shin and Metsu. Unfortunately, there's not more context to this scene except maybe implying a possible villain being present, but it's so piecemeal that we really can't say for certain. Before we look at the rest of the trailer, we should look at the final credits image, as music is a rather important part of this series. It shows that Yasunori Mitsuda will be working on the music. Some of his previous credits include Chrono Trigger, Xenogears, the N64 Mario Party games. Okay, I had to derail there for a second before I built up to the ending theme of the original Xenoblade Chronicles. We can also see that he composed the main theme of this game, which is a remixed version of Yoko Shimomura's theme for the original. Joining him are Tomori Kuda and Ace, who previously worked as composers for the original Xenoblade Chronicles and for Super Mario 3D World as well. And finally, there's the returning composers Kenji Hiramatsu and Manami Kyota. Guess you could say the whole band's back together, and it's a good feeling.
There's still plenty more to see in the trailer though. At one point, we see a massive airship above the clouds, and it almost looks to be a full-fledged town based on its design. It's kind of like a port with various small air whales docked along the edges and grips holding them in place. On top of the whales are compartments, which is likely where the people who somehow pilot them ride.
These whales look awfully similar to the whale we see at the end of the trailer, as well as the concept art. They might be its offspring, we're not sure, but it's a minor point nonetheless.
We can also see that people are walking along the bridge and other pathways on this airship, and considering how small they appear, this thing is absolutely massive. It's very likely a fully functioning city in the sky, and we'll see more evidence of this later on. But for an even more impressive example of scale, we can see a tree in the background. It stretches from below the clouds all the way to the top of the screen. This is very likely the tree whose roots we saw near that other town. Just as the original Xenoblade was focused around the Mechonis and Bionis, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 seems primarily set around this massive tree and the sky surrounding it. Perhaps Elysium is found at the very top.
Switching it up, always wanted to say that since the presentation concluded, we get a good look at the market here, presumably the one that would be inside of an airship. We can see pots, barrels, rugs, sacks, lights strung up with other decorations, and a wooden floor. Pretty mundane. Less mundane, however, is that Nopon are back once again! Or Nopon, depending on whether or not Nintendo of America is going to be localizing this game. This isn't really all that surprising, as they're a series staple and they're filling the typical role of shopkeepers. Two more Nopon can be seen here, one near the stack of crates and rugs, and another just before the scene cuts away. On the other side of the pink Nopon seems to be a human shopkeeper, although there's no indication of what could be sold here. Hopefully the human is not the goods being sold here and the Nopon is not doing that. It's more just a general bazaar. However, there's a large decorated door in the background on the catwalk. Could lead somewhere special like a minigame, could be decorated because it's the entrance to the market. Your guess is as good as ours.
There's much more to the airship, of course. Another scene takes place in some kind of factory or maybe the engine room. We can see pipes all over and what may be power cells. What's intriguing is that they're the same color as the cores on Himura and Hikari's chest. Is it possible that blades are being used to power certain technology? Or is it simply a coincidence? Stranger still, the figures we see down below are not human. They're more bird-like in nature.
Those are called Tyrkins, which are yet another returning enemy. Why they're found on an airship of all places, we don't know. Maybe it's so big that monsters got in, kind of like rat infestations on old sailing ships, but either way, their presence is important as it might hint to a returning combat element. Before, the main gimmick of Tyrkins was that they were enemies that could perform chain attacks, not something commonly seen carried by regular enemies. And considering that we see them standing in a circle in the background much like they did earlier, that ability has likely returned. And this would also mean that Rex and the rest of his party would be able to perform chain attacks and overdrive is out the window.
The final scene shows the tree once again. We don't know what's below the clouds and it stretches beyond what we can see, yet there are branches and leaves on the side which, given the scale, might be perfectly fine to walk on and explore. However, there's more land than just this tree as the camera pulls back to show Rex looking out over it with his sword. Is he standing on a tall mountain or could there be patches of floating islands? There's just so much potential.
And the world is going to be very big. We see the airwell rise up through the clouds again, simply showing the sheer scale of everything. But for as big as it is, the tree is higher than everything else. And with how much of a focus it has, we do believe it has to be climbed to reach Elysium.
But what is Elysium? What are Rex, Himura, and the others trying to find there? Who could possibly be trying to stop them?
Could this tie into the ending of Xenoblade Chronicles? Will Adam Howden return to voice yet another character? I certainly hope he does, and how will the combat change and evolve since the original and X?
We obviously have a lot of questions, but we're both super excited to see more of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. For now though, that's everything we could find in its reveal trailer. Will it actually come out in 2017? Well, we'd be surprised. Until then, we'll be there to cover it all. But if we missed anything, make sure to let us know in the comments. And thank you, Chugga, for helping us out. Where can they find you at?
Once again, thank you so much for having me. You can find me on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, really anywhere. Actually, no, not really. Those are like the only 3 places that I have an account though. But anyway, you can find me at Chuggaaconroy, 2 G's, 2 A's. I've made a lot of Xenoblade videos in the past, make a lot of videos on Nintendo games, and I should have something new coming out right around the same time as this video. I hope so, at least. Otherwise, I've just let a lot of people down by letting that slip in this video that it was intended to come out this week and isn't. Anyway, see you guys then.
Of course, thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to Game Explained for more on Xenoblade Chronicles and other things gaming.